Well, welcome, Jeannie. I'm so glad to get to have this conversation with you today. I want to just quickly introduce you for people who maybe are new to your work. You are an academic strategist and a speaker. We have had the immense pleasure of working together on your book. And I would love for you to just start by telling our viewers or listeners, what is an academic strategist and what are your credentials for writing your book?
Yeah. So I wrote a pretty heavy duty book with your help, Stacy. It's Launch: How to Get Your Kids Through College Debt Free and Into Jobs They Love Afterward. And my credential for writing this is I have 25 years of experience helping students apply to highly competitive law schools, medical schools, graduate schools, business schools. And in the time I've been doing that, I always have to have a debt discussion with each of my clients, because if you're going to go to medical school, you have to know what your debt load is going to be like when you graduate from medical school, so you can see if you can even pay it back on a doctor's salary. So I ask all my clients, what's your student loan debt look like right now for looking at the cumulative? And yes, I heard heartbreaking stories, but I also heard amazing stories from students who said, I have zero student loan debt. And I would say, oh my goodness, how did you do that? And then they would say, oh, I used this, or I did this, or I found out this strategy, or this trick that I could use. And I would write down those things, because here's what a consultant does. We get great ideas from one client, and then we charge other people by the hour to hear that exact same information. So, I mean, as the years went by, I had this file stacked full of all these cool things that nobody else was talking about that you could use to get through college debt free. And what it really came down to is parents needed to do some strategizing very early on, especially if they were not planning to save any money, especially if they thought that they weren't getting any government financial aid, especially if they thought their kids weren't getting any scholarships. Parents needed to take some steps. So I wrote a book aimed at parents that's essentially like a message in a bottle. It goes back in time. So I'm thinking myself as reaching my clients when they're in 8th grade and telling their parents, don't fall for this, don't fall for this, be sure you do this. So we're setting your kid up to not only get through college debt free, but be ready to jump directly into careers they excel at and love.
I love that message because it really gets to the heart. Although a lot of what you do does have to do with money, it also impacts so much of people's lives. I was just thinking today as I was getting ready for our discussion about when we first met. And, we actually are talking today because I reached out to you to ask your permission to use a testimonial you'd written for me on my new website for Nonfiction Book School. I have registration open now through August 5th. And you very graciously not only agreed, you wrote an amazing article about our work together, and you agreed to do this interview with me. And I was really excited that you agreed to join me today because, a lot of people who are thinking about writing a book have been thinking about it for a long time. They've been considering that maybe possibly they could write a book, but there's all this kind of self-doubt, or there's all these things that they're believing about themselves or about their possibility that maybe are holding them back. And I'd be curious to know a little bit about your journey, about, how long did you think about writing your book? What made you eventually finally decide to do it? And kind of what was that journey like for you to even begin to write that first draft?
Well, the real foundational piece of I have to write a book is that I had all this information on how to solve a huge worldwide problem. And my friends would come to me. I would talk to people who I met. One time I was talking to a single mom. She's giving me a massage, and I gave her some ideas for her kid, and her kid got $90,000 worth of scholarship money. And I thought, this is a huge problem in this world, and I have what it takes to help. And that's what I would say is the great fuel for the passion to write a book, is when you realize that you have something to say that can honestly help people. And if you have that passion to honestly really be able to change people's lives, that will be the fuel that you need to give up a sunny summer day to sit in your basement office and type and come up with some manuscript material. And so for me, it just became overwhelming. I have to get this out. I cannot tell everybody about this one by one because I'm gonna get exhausted and I can't help my own clients. And so I'm gonna put a book on Amazon. I'm just gonna direct everybody straight there. Now, here's the thing that really took me a long time, Stacy. I didn't want to do all of the macroscopic book structuring. I didn't want to be in charge of the editing and the interior design and the cover design and all the proofreading and the copy editing and all these little pieces. I did not want that because I'm a go-getter. I'm an achiever. I just wanted someone else to handle all that. So I spent years in delay going to writers' conferences, trying to pitch to acquisitions editors. And every single time I pitched to an acquisitions editor for a publishing company, they said, oh my gosh, we have to have this. This is your credential, what your book is about. This meets a felt need in the country. We have to have this. I landed one of the top literary agents in my space. And you know, everything took so darn long. And finally, when I landed a book contract and I opened up that book contract and I realized how little money I was going to make from each book that I sold. And here's what really got me. When I realized that they could just take my book out of print like that, and then I would lose all my rights because essentially I read the contract. Essentially, I was going to be signing away all my rights and they were going to own all my work and they could determine whether it was out there in the marketplace helping people or not. And at that point, I said, I'm done. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to be my own publisher. So I started up a publishing company. We're not going to use the word self-published. I started a publishing company with its own website that cost me fully $5 to put out there. And then I started the process of finding professional help to get this put together. And Stacy, the way that I found you, and I love this story, I knew I needed an editor. I knew I needed that. And so I Googled best editor. Which did not sound so comical, but there was Stacy Ennis showing up in best editor on the first page of Google. And it was partly because of the book you wrote called The Editor's Eye. And I immediately found you. I contacted you. I said, would you take on a project? You said, what's it about? I told you. And you said, yes, I'll take you. And I feel so fortunate that you took me because you are able to take only 1% of the projects that are offered to you that come across your desk. You're constantly having to say, no, 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 but you saw something in me. And you said,
chills. Thank you, Jeannie.
We're going to do this. Excuse me, sorry. You said, we're going to do this. And what I love, so many things I loved about you, but one of the things was this is a giant project because it's orchestrating parent activity from prior to 7th grade all the way until the kids are 18 years old and headed off to college. And people who read my book read a chapter every 3 months as their kids are growing up. It's like a reference book. No one reads the whole thing at one sitting. And so it was huge, and you were never daunted by how huge it was. You were never thrown. Sometimes I was quite thrown. Oh my goodness, this is a lot. But you helped me to organize it and shape it and polish it. And the product I got after you worked with me is easily 100 times more than what I could have gotten on my own. And you got to remember, I'm a professional writer for 25 years. I've been helping people shape the communication that they need to get into highly competitive law schools, medical schools, graduate schools, business schools. I know how to write. But what I didn't know was how to shape and polish and structure a book. And that's where I needed you. And that's where you came through for me big time.
Oh, what a beautiful, that gave me so many happy chills. You know, it's true. One thing that I often tell people is that writing is a skill. That's a skill you have to learn. And then writing a book is a skill you have to learn. So it's a totally different skill set. And it's something that takes a lot of time to learn, not only how to do yourself, but then how to actually create a process around that you can then apply to future projects. For me, it's been learning through studying one-on-one work, like the work that we did together, and figuring out how do you create a process that a lot of different people, a lot of aspiring authors can also use, a step-by-step process that they can follow. And that's really that is the whole point of Nonfiction Book School that I've created is to take many authors on a similar journey that you've taken. That's not just about the book. Like, the book is very important, but it's also about the journey of writing the book and all the clarity and the internal transformation and kind of stepping into thought leadership too. I think that's such a powerful piece of it.
This is why I'm so excited about Nonfiction Book School, that you're putting this together, because I have friends who've seen what I've done and they've said, oh, I want to write a book. And I would say, you can actually do it. You need to try to get a hold of Stacy. And then people would call you and you would say, I'm sorry, I'm booked out 18 months or I'm booked out 2 years. And with Nonfiction Book School, people are able to get your help structuring and walking through the process. And then you show up live every Tuesday, right? So people can ask you their questions. So they're getting your guidance and your expertise, but they're not having to get in that big long line. And it's so important as an author, you don't want to be in a big long line. And you know, you're talking about people having book skills. Honestly, we who are authors and writers, we just want to write and get our message out there. We don't really want book skills. We don't really, not really want to develop that. I want someone else to carry that ball. Mm-hmm. I don't want to have to be the entire football team. I need a quarterback, so I can, someone who's, you know, calling the plays and telling me where to run. And then I just take what I do and I stay in my lane and I do what I do fantastically well. And I have you as a coach and as a director. That's what really made the difference for me. And I'm convinced if I'd have gone the route for traditional publishing, I would have never had a Stacy Ennis in that kind of a context. I would have never had the kind of expertise I got from you on shaping and polishing and structuring. So these people getting in nonfiction book, say the name of it again.
Nonfiction Book School. You got it.
Right. Those people are incredibly lucky. I'm highly recommending it.
Oh, thank you, Jeannie. Yeah, I think that there is something, you said something really important, and it's really like your journey to authorhood is not about learning the skill of book writing so you can continue to like teach other people about it and do it over and over again. Some people, yes, they actually do want to learn that, but for a lot of authors, they want to do it maybe once, maybe twice. They want to do it really, really well. They want to write a really great book. Your expertise is in helping people get through college debt-free and into jobs they love. You need to be focused on that and on making your impact, not on like wading through the muck of like, how do you write a book? And definitely not doing what most people do, which is just sit down and stare at a blank screen and then get frustrated that they can't write a book. Because that's not how it works. You were able to walk through a process of planning and getting this really kind of amazing structure to your book. Your book is very complicated and it's very long and it's very detailed, and it's walking people essentially through an entire plan for their children's educational savings and scholarships and like all of the things that parents need to know. And you needed to understand how to deliver that content, but you didn't necessarily need to understand in detail how a nonfiction book is structured precisely for, you didn't need to know all the nitty-gritty. You just needed to know how to apply it to get your message across, right?
Yes, and here's why I think people really need you in this process. Here's the thing a high achiever just dreads more than anything else. We dread sitting down and typing and working on something for 400 hours, and then some expert tells us, I'm sorry, you have to start over. Because that it doesn't do this and it doesn't do this and it fails at this and you had too much of this and not enough of this. And by having direction and coaching from the very beginning, I was able to have an expert say to me, here's what works, here's what you're going to do, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. And I have to confess to you, Stacy, when I started with you, I had the word editor written across your forehead. So I expected you to be brutal. I had heard things about editors and I thought they lived in dark caves and they had big swords for slashing people's work to pieces. Oh my goodness, you were so incredibly gentle. I could not believe it. and sometimes you weren't telling me to cut stuff. You weren't telling me to take my baby and cut the legs off to make it fit in a cradle. Sometimes you were telling me you have to add a little something at the beginning of every chapter that's like a little bit of introductory. Hello, here's where we are in the journey. Isn't this fun? You're doing great. You're doing wonderfully well. Now let's learn something new that we can do for this month of our child's life.
All right, Jeannie, we had a tiny bit of technical difficulty, but you were just about to tell me about how when you were working on your book, it was, when we were working together, you found it was less about cutting in your particular case and more about really infusing your voice and warmth, like the person that you are here in our conversation, bringing that into your book. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So because my book is got this really, really specific focus, we're going to give you instructions that are going to help you get your kids through college debt-free and then into jobs they love afterward. Because I always say we never talk about college without also talking about the career it's going to lead to afterward. And so I have a lot of specific instructions. It's a lot of like, do this, now do this, now do this. And I expected when I started working with you that you were going to be very strict about making me cut a lot of things. This is what I had heard about editors, that they would come in with a big sword and they would force you to sort of cut your baby's legs off to make it fit in a cradle. And that's what I was expecting. And I had a lot of material because you're going to do a process that starts from prior to 7th grade and goes all the way to age 18. There's a lot of detail in there. I was really surprised that you actually had me add things. This is something I wasn't expecting. And the specific things that you had me add are now part of my very, very favorite parts of the book. And what you said was every time I opened up a chapter, and let's say a parent gets to May of 9th grade and they're going to read this chapter that's got instructions in it, you said that I should open the chapter with some warmth and some acknowledging where they are in the journey and with saying to them, you're doing a great job, you're doing something for your kids that is going to pay off for generations. Don't worry. And here's a classic thing we kept saying over and over. Don't worry if you can't do all of this. That's okay. Just do what you can and then just modify or discard the rest. And that message kept coming up over and over again. And now when I read chapters, I have to go back and look something up. I feel so thankful and so appreciative of those parts because it's me connecting with their hearts and being a friend on the journey and not just an instructor. Come on, chop, chop. Now this is what we're going to do. And I think that my readers greatly appreciate that as well. So many things about you surprise me, Stacy.
Oh, thank you. It's so fun to talk about this because for me, it's kind of like a trip down memory lane. Well, you and I worked together several years back. And during that time, I was doing a lot more hands-on editing. So I was jumping in and really revising books more than I do today. Today, I'm doing more ghostwriting and book coaching and authoring my own books, co-authoring. But I love what you just described because what you're talking about is really about showing up on the page and finding your voice as a writer. And especially for somebody like you, you're very dynamic, you're very friendly. You want people to read your book and then meet you in person and feel like you're the same, right? They don't want to feel like there's a disconnect there. And actually one of the modules that we cover in the program is on voice. So we're going to be talking about, there's actually a training on bestseller writing tactics. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is how do you show up as you on the page? It's something people really struggle with as writers. And I assume that was a journey for you as well, because I know it was for me.
Oh, yes. And in Nonfiction Book School, people are going to come out, I think, feeling like I know what to show, I know what to highlight and showcase, and I know what to kind of not talk about and cast in the shadows. I know in the work that I do when I'm helping people apply to medical school or law school or graduate school, a big part of when I'm shaping their communication is I'm helping them to decide what to talk a lot about and what to talk very little or not at all about. And people tell me, I just can't see that on my own. I cannot figure that out by myself. And my goodness, when you're writing a book rather than a medical school application, you really need a person with a editor's eye, a person who's got this coaching ability that you have, to say more of this, less of this.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
how can you as an author be creative and bring out your best message and your best self without somebody besides yourself? Got to have some expert guide there saying to you, this is great, we want more of that. This is not helping, and so we want less of that. And a couple times I've had to read a book because I was, for some reason, and you can tell they did not have that kind of coaching. And I
Yeah.
find myself going, chop, chop, come on, come on, come on, get past all this, get right to the nitty gritty, get to what I need. But yet I'm reading and I still want to have that feel like the author's personally caring about me.
Mm-hmm.
So in Nonfiction Book School, I think people are going to be able to get expert guidance. And then because you show up on Tuesdays, people can ask you questions, which is critically important. Everyone wants to feel like they had a little bit of Stacy directed right at their particular questions, right?
Yeah, it's so important. Plus, just as for me, part of the reason I created this was to support more authors, but I didn't want to just like plug and play, like, okay, here you go. I just enjoy the journey. I wanted to be there and be supportive and present. I'm curious, Jeannie, if you could share with me, what is really the number one thing you learned along your journey? And I'm sure that many aspiring authors are going to be on the edge of their seats to know, like, what was the number one lesson, number one thing that you learned along the way writing Launch?
Well, the number one, I mean, if I could go back to my younger self and say, you can only tell younger Jeannie one thing. The number one thing I would want to say is stop going. I mean, go to writers' conferences because it's fun to meet people and you do learn and you get all these sessions that you get to go to. I don't regret that. But don't go there and spend thousands and thousands of dollars pitching to book acquisitions editors and trying to land a publishing contract and trying to get a literary agent. I was able to do all of those things successfully when a huge percentage of authors who try to do that are never able to get a book contract. And I turned it down and I went this completely different route, which was get with Stacy, figure out how to structure and polish this. And you know, from the moment I got you, I just took off like a rocket. There was no more delay. There was no more waiting around for people to notice me. I just started on the process and I got it all done. And at any step, when I wondered, what do I do next? You said to me, the next step is called copy editing. I had never heard of that before. And you referred me out to this most wonderful copy editor that I just absolutely loved. I've sent so many people to her. And, you know, you always knew what the next step was. And so there was no delay. It's like, get this done. And then the book came out and I launched it and it was successful. And I have to say, I made back all the money that I paid you. And I had to also pay an interior designer and a cover designer and a copy editor and a proofreader. I made back all that money in the first week after the book launch.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was such high quality that people were ready to jump on it and get it. So Stace, best investment that I have ever made in myself. And I thank you so much for being there for me. So those people who are going to get you for Nonfiction Book School, they're going to be, I think they're going to be very, very surprised by the value that you bring to the table. I think right now people are trying to think, what might this be like if I go through Nonfiction Book School? You can't even imagine the value that this woman's going to bring. If you believe in yourself, you believe in your message, you want to help the world. This is something I highly recommend.
Thank you, Jeannie. Wow, that's very, very, very touching. I appreciate it so much. And it's been such an honor to work with you and to watch your journey unfold. It's been exciting because working with books, I see the end product, but I also see the journey to get to that end result, the book. And then I also get to watch how the book becomes a catalyst for scaled impact. And what has been so cool about your journey is when we met several years back, you were already having a measurable, profound influence and impact on families. But your book, from my perspective, allowed you to just really broaden that impact. You've gotten national media coverage. You've gotten these amazing recognition from major corporations who want your material. And I I wonder if you would have been able to do that without the book. It's not that you wouldn't have existed in that level of expertise, but it was almost like your entry ticket, like the thing that got you that next piece of scaling in your impact.
Yeah, and I think that some people think, oh, if you write a book, then you can say, I'm an author. And then when you say that, people think, woo, woo, you must be really cool. Actually, if you're an author of a bad book and you say, I'm an author, people go look it up on Amazon and they see it has only 2 reviews and they were both 2 stars. This is not going to help your business. It is not going to help your brand. It's actually going to do damage. So
Yes.
you do not want to just slap together something that is poorly organized and poorly expressed and subpar and got a unattractive book cover and put that up on the internet and just put it up on Amazon and say, oh, I'm an author. Nobody's going to be impressed by that because people actually do go and look at your book. But when you have a heart to help the world and you want to shape a message that is really life-changing for people, and you put that up there, people can immediately tell. And then when they go and they look at the book, then they say, oh, actually have to have this. And when they engage with it and they're reading it and they can sense that passion and that message of, I really want to help you. Here's how the biggest way that has impacted me. Sometimes I'll be in my kitchen, I'm emptying the dishwasher or talking to one of my kids, and all of a sudden it hits me, you know what? I could be helping someone right now. Right now, there could be somebody that's reading my book that's feeling better about this process. There could be some single mom at a Title I school who thinks she has no hope, and she's in the middle of chapter 4, and she's starting to feel hope for her kids. And I'm emptying the dishwasher, and I'm helping people at the same time. Up until that point, if I were going to help somebody, I had to be talking. Mm-hmm. And I only have so many words. I only have so many hours. I only have so many hours available for consulting and speaking and teaching, doing webinars. I only have so much time for that. But what the book does is it allows you to magnify your impact and the help that you're able to give. And Stacy, here's one other thing. I also have a real heart for people who are low income. And I wanted my message to not just reach wealthy families who could easily afford $5,000 for a consultant to get their kids through college debt free. I didn't want to be a part of that. So I put a book on Amazon for $34.99. Why? So that anybody could get it at the library. And I've been really surprised that my friend who's a librarian looked my book up and saw my book is in libraries all across the country. And I said, oh. I didn't think it could be in the library. I thought it had the wrong kind of binding on it. And my friend, the librarian, said, oh no, we don't look at that binding thing anymore. If a book wears out, we just get a new copy on Amazon. I was surprised. But what's happening is people who can't afford to buy a $35 book are just going into the library and asking for it. And the librarians are like, oh my gosh, look, we would love to have this here. And the people are reading it for free. And they're benefiting. And that's why I'm here on this earth, because I want to help people. And if your listeners are thinking about writing a book and they know there's something in there that would actually help people, I'll tell you what my media coach says. My media coach is TJ Mercer. She says, girl, you are the answer to somebody's prayers. You have got to make some noise. You cannot be quiet about this. And that's what I would say to your listeners here who are authors. What you have is the answer to somebody's prayers. You have to put it out there or you're doing a disservice to the world. And put it out there. I mean, that's easier said than done. And that's why people need somebody like Stacy Ennis. They need somebody like something like Nonfiction Book School so that they can get on this journey and get this done with no time or money wasted.
Well, it's so inspiring listening to you talk about your purpose and also connect it to really my purpose, which is to help more people like you put more good into the world and make an impact. That's why I, many years ago, decided that the clients that I work with, the people that I serve, that I show up for, are people who are here on this planet to make it a better place. And that could be through a big idea, it could be through their expertise, or it could be through a social good. Actually, you have all three, so it's pretty inspiring, Jeannie. I think you're amazing. Now, you mentioned your book can be found in the library for free. And before we wrap up, I would love for you to share you have all these great free resources for families.
Yeah.
And along with, you have the work that you can do with people. Can you tell about the free resources that you have available to help people who are really looking to get their kids through college debt free and into jobs that they love?
So the first free thing is just get the book at the library and just read chapters 1 and 2 only, and you will feel on fire and inspired, and you will feel like you want to just devour the rest of it. That's one thing. I do have some little free training that somebody can get. You watch a little 10-minute video based on the age of your kid, and it says, here's how to use this book most effectively. You probably will not have to read the whole thing. If you've got an 11th grader right now, just go straight to these chapters and just let go of the rest. Don't even feel bad about it. So most parents are not reading the whole thing. It's like a reference book where you don't read the whole thing. You just read the part that applies to you. So this 10-minute training based on the age of your kid is sent out automatically to anyone who subscribes to my free weekly email newsletter. And I'm so excited about this free weekly email newsletter because it's my way of reaching out every Monday morning. I tap you on the shoulder and I say, hey, here are some things to be thinking about right now. And in the left sidebar, it says, based on whatever the age your kid is, here's what you should be reading this month. Here's the 7 pages to read to make sure that you're up to speed on everything we're doing. If there are any changes, like if the United States were to completely change everything about college financing, I can reach all my followers in 2 days because I can send out an email and I know people open my emails and read them. So I can have book updates. And one thing that's in there, if I'm teaching a class or if I've got a free webinar, there's a financial services company that hires me to do free webinars, and they don't sell anything. They are just for the good and to bless the community. And all my followers get invited to those. So to find that free weekly email newsletter, grab a pen and write this down. You just need to go to this bit.ly link. It's bit.ly/helpful newsletter. And that's all lowercase, all one word. And Stacy's going to put the link below.
Yes, I will.
Below this video. Be like boy, bit.ly/helpful newsletter, all lowercase, all one word. And that way I'll be able to help you on an ongoing basis. It won't be like a shooting star of a little inspiration today, and then you never see me again. You'll get me every Monday, and that's completely free.
Yeah. And, I think I've been a subscriber since we met, so many years. And I have to add before I close our interview, do you know that when we worked together, I set up 529s for my kids because of you? And I have been contributing since we started working together. And that was really profound for me, just having that. It's not like I wouldn't have at some point probably learned about 529s, but having that just like understanding of why it matters so early was really powerful. So I encourage anybody with children, period, who might go to college, which is anybody's kid, to pick up Jeannie's book. I'll be sure to link to the book, to your newsletter, to that beautiful, wonderful, amazing article that you wrote about me, which I'm just so touched by. Jeannie, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful and I really appreciate you.
Well, I'm so thankful. You have changed my life, Stacy. And I'm convinced that anybody who is fortunate enough to be able to get into Nonfiction Book School, they're going to be surprised by the impact that they can have with your help.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much, Jeannie.